The crystalline spires of the Meridian Palace pierced the violet sky, their surfaces refracting the light of 3 moons into dancing patterns across the marble courtyards below. Within these halls of splendor and ancient tradition, Princess Nayara of the Meridian Empire sat alone in her chambers, her unseeing eyes fixed on a point beyond the ornate windows. Born with a rare genetic condition that left her blind and physically weakened, Nayara had become the Empire's greatest shame, a heir apparent who could neither lead armies nor command the respect of her warriors. The Meridians, a species evolved from avian ancestors, prized physical perfection and aerial combat prowess above all else. A princess who could not even spread her wings and soar was considered worse than useless. The soft chime of her chamber doors interrupted her thoughts. "Your Highness," her attendant's voice wavered slightly, "the Terran delegation has arrived." Nayara straightened in her hover chair, adjusting the neural interface that helped her maintain her balance. "Very well. Escort them to the grand reception hall." Her voice carried the practiced neutrality she had perfected over years of hiding her pain. The Terran delegation represented humanity's first diplomatic mission to the Meridian Empire. After centuries of isolation, the Empire had finally been forced to acknowledge the growing influence of Earth and its colonies. But Nayara knew the truth. They were desperate. A mysterious plague was spreading through their population, and human medical science might be their only hope. Commander James Harrison stood at attention as the massive doors of the reception hall swung open. 20 years of military service and diplomatic missions hadn't prepared him for the sight before him. The hall seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal, with graceful meridians perched on floating platforms at various heights, their iridescent wings folded formally behind them. At the center of it all was Princess Nayara. Unlike her people's typical tall, athletic builds, she appeared delicate, almost fragile. But Harrison noticed something else, a quiet dignity in her bearing, a strength that had nothing to do with physical prowess. "Commander Harrison," she spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Welcome to the Meridian Empire." Harrison approached, nodding how the court's whispers followed him. "Your Highness, I bring greetings from Earth and the United Colonial Alliance." He studied her face. Her eyes, though unseeing, held an intelligence that belied the dismissive glances of her courtiers. The formal introductions proceeded according to protocol, but Harrison couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong in this glittering court. The way the nobles barely concealed their disdain for their princess, the subtle undercurrent of tension in every interaction. Later that evening, during the ceremonial feast, Harrison found himself seated near Princess Nayara. While others spoke around and over her, he addressed her directly. "Your palace architecture is fascinating, Your Highness. The acoustic properties of the crystal must create interesting effects." Nayara turned toward him, surprise briefly crossing her features. "You're the first visitor to notice that, Commander. The crystal harmonics help me navigate. I may not see with my eyes, but I've learned to see through sound and vibration." "Impressive," Harrison replied genuinely. "On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention." A small smile touched her lips. "And what necessities have you faced, Commander?" Before he could respond, First Minister Darius, a towering meridian with steel-gray wings, interrupted. "Commander, surely you'd prefer to discuss matters of substance with someone more qualified. Princess Nayara's interests are necessarily limited by her condition." Harrison met the minister's gaze steadily. "On the contrary, Minister, I find Her Highness's perspective invaluable. Sometimes the most qualified person to solve a problem is the one who's had to think differently their entire life." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Nayara's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on her hoverchair's controls, while Darius's wings rustled in barely contained irritation. In that moment, Harrison made a decision that would change both their worlds. This wasn't just about a diplomatic mission anymore. In Princess Nayara, he saw not weakness but untapped potential. And in the contemptuous gazes of her court, he recognized a dangerous mistake underestimating someone because they were different. As the evening drew to a close, Harrison approached Nayara one final time. Your Highness, if you're willing, I'd like to discuss some ideas about adapting Terran technology to enhance mobility and spatial awareness. We've made significant advances in neural interface systems. Nayara turned toward him, hope warring with suspicion in her expression. Why would you help me, Commander? Because, Harrison replied softly, I believe the strength of any civilization lies not in conformity, but in how it embraces and empowers all its people, even those who might seem different. As Harrison left the hall that night, he didn't notice the dark look that passed between First Minister Darius and several other court officials. The seeds of change had been planted, but so too had the seeds of resistance. The game was about to begin, and the stakes were higher than anyone realized. Over the next few weeks, the Meridian Palace witnessed an unprecedented transformation. Commander Harrison had converted one of the lesser-used crystal chambers into what he called the Adaptation Center, filling it with specialized Terran equipment. The room hummed with the gentle whir of neural interface calibrators and adaptive learning systems. Princess Nayara arrived each morning before the first sun rose, determined to prove her worth. Harrison had introduced her to Dr. Olivia West, a brilliant human neurotechnology specialist who had joined their delegation. Together, they began unlocking the princess's hidden potential. The neural patterns are fascinating, Dr. West explained as she adjusted the sensitivity of Nayara's new sensory enhancement system. Your brain has already developed unique ways of processing spatial information through sound. We're not replacing that, we're amplifying it. The breakthrough came during their third week of training. Harrison had arranged various obstacles throughout the chamber, each made of different materials that would create distinct acoustic signatures. Nayara, wearing the newly calibrated neural interface, moved through the space with growing confidence. The crystal is singing to me, she whispered, her hand trailing along a column. I can feel the variations in density, the microscopic imperfections. It's like seeing with my whole body. Harrison watched from the doorway, a smile playing at his lips, ready to try something more challenging. The hovering platforms that Meridians typically used for aerial court ceremonies had been modified with Terran stabilization technology. With Harrison's guidance and the new interface system, Nayara learned to control them with unprecedented precision. She might not be able to fly with wings, but she could navigate the three-dimensional space of her people's culture in her own way. Word of the princess's progress spread through the palace. Some courtiers began watching the training sessions from a distance, their whispers now tinged with curiosity rather than contempt. But not everyone welcomed these changes. First Minister Darius observed from his private chambers, his wings twitching with agitation as he reviewed the security feeds. This is dangerous, he muttered to his assembled allies. The humans are disrupting centuries of tradition, a weak heir leading our people? Impossible. But Nayara was far from weak. Each day brought new achievements. The neural interface had been refined to allow her to feel the positions of others in the room through subtle air pressure changes. Her hover chair had been replaced with a more sophisticated platform that responded to her slightest intention, allowing her to participate in the intricate aerial dances that were such an important part of Meridian culture. During one memorable evening, Harrison found her in the palace gardens, practicing with the new systems. The three moons cast shifting shadows through the crystal trees, but Nayara navigated between them effortlessly. Your control is impressive, he noted, genuinely amazed by her progress. Nayara descended to his level, a rare smile gracing her features. I had a good teacher, though I suspect you're teaching me more than just technology, Commander. Though, you're teaching me that different doesn't mean lesser, that adaptation can be just as valuable as tradition. She paused, her unseeing eyes somehow finding his. The court physicians always focused on my limitations. You and Dr. West saw possibilities instead. Harrison stepped closer, lowering his voice. Because we're outsiders, Your Highness. We're not bound by your society's preconceptions. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to see the truth. And what truth is that? That strength comes in many forms. Your people value physical power and aerial grace, but leadership requires more than that. It requires wisdom, adaptability, and understanding qualities you have in abundance. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. West, her expression tense. "Commander, Your Highness, we have a problem. Someone attempted to access our secure research files. They were particularly interested in the neural interface specifications." Harrison's expression hardened. "First Minister Darius." "We can't prove it," Dr. West replied, "but the access codes used were high-level administrative." Nayara's hands tightened on her platform's controls. He fears change, and he's not alone. Many in the court believe that accepting help from humans, especially to aid someone they consider defective, weakens our empire. "Then we'll have to prove them wrong," Harrison stated firmly. "Your progress isn't just about personal achievement anymore, Your Highness. You're becoming a symbol of what's possible when tradition and innovation work together." As they discussed security measures and future plans, none of them noticed the small drone hovering in the crystal trees, its cameras recording everything. In his chambers, First Minister Darius watched the feed with growing resolve. The humans had to be stopped, and the princess had to be reminded of her place. The game of politics was about to turn deadly, and not everyone would survive the coming storm. The day of the Imperial Assembly dawned with all three moons still visible in the morning sky, a rare alignment that the more superstitious Meridians viewed as an omen. In the grand crystal chamber, hundreds of noble houses gathered, their wings creating a shimmer of iridescent colors against the translucent walls. Princess Nayara prepared herself in her chambers, working with Dr. West to ensure her neural interface was perfectly calibrated. Today would be her first major public appearance since beginning her training with the humans. Everything had to be perfect. "Your neural patterns are stable," Dr. West reported, making final adjustments. "The new spatial awareness protocols are fully integrated. Are you ready?" Before Nayara could respond, Commander Harrison entered, his expression grave. "We have a situation. 3 more cases of the plague have been reported in the outer provinces. First Minister Darius is already using it to stir up anti-human sentiment." Nayara's fingers traced the crystal controls of her hover platform. "He claims our association with Earth has brought contamination to our people. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" Harrison nodded grimly. "Too convenient. We've had our medical team analyzing the plague data. Dr. West, show her what you found." Dr. West projected a holographic display showing genetic sequences. "The virus shows signs of artificial manipulation. Someone engineered this plague, Your Highness, and they're using it to undermine both your authority and the human alliance." Nayara absorbed this information, her unseeing eyes narrowing. "Then we'll use the assembly to expose the truth, but we'll need proof." "We have something better," Harrison smiled. "We have a plan." The assembly began with traditional ceremonies, the noble houses performing intricate aerial formations while singing ancient harmonies that made the crystal chamber resonate. Nayara waited in the antechamber, listening to the frequencies through her enhanced interface. First Minister Darius took the central platform, his wings spread in a display of authority. "Noble houses of the Meridian Empire, we face unprecedented challenges. The plague that afflicts our people coincides with increased human presence in our realm. The gods themselves warn us. Today's lunar alignment is a sign." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Darius continued, his voice rising. "And now we see our heir apparent embracing foreign technology, abandoning our traditions. I move that Princess Nayara be declared unfit to rule for the safety and purity of our empire." That was her cue. Nayara guided her platform through the grand archway, but something was different. Instead of the usual hover technology, she was using the modified Meridian wing harness that Harrison's team had developed. The neural interface allowed her to control the artificial wings as if they were her own, combining human innovation with Meridian tradition. She soared through the chamber, navigating the space with a grace that left the assembly speechless. The crystal harmonics guided her, creating a perfect flight path through the gathered nobles. She came to rest before Darius, her artificial wings folding elegantly. "You speak of tradition, First Minister. her voice carried clearly through the chamber. But our greatest tradition is survival. For 10,000 years, the Meridian Empire has endured by adapting, by taking the best of what we encounter and making it our own. She gestured to Harrison and Dr. West, who projected their findings about the plague. While you spread fear, the humans worked to save our people. They discovered that the plague was engineered by those who would rather see our empire fall than change. Darius's wings bristled. Lies, human deception. The virus carries your genetic signature, First Minister, Dr. West announced. A signature we found in the secure medical database you accessed without authorization. The chamber erupted in chaos. Darius's wings snapped open as he lunged toward Nayara, but she was ready. Using the neural interface's enhanced spatial awareness, she dove aside while Harrison's security team moved in. You understand nothing, Darius snarled as he was restrained. Our purity, our traditions. We'll live on, Nayara interrupted, but not through stagnation. The Meridian Empire must evolve or die. I may not have been born perfect by our ancient standards, but I have learned to adapt. Perhaps it's time our empire did the same. The assembly watched in stunned silence as Darius was led away. But then, something remarkable happened. One by one, the noble houses began to perform the traditional wing-touch gesture of respect, not just to Nayara's position, but to her vision of a new future. As the assembly concluded, Harrison approached Nayara. Impressive flying, Your Highness. She smiled. I had excellent teachers, but this is just the beginning, isn't it? Yes, he agreed, watching the still muttering nobles depart. Darius wasn't working alone, and somewhere out there, more of the engineered virus waits to be released. Nayara's expression hardened with determination. Then we'll face it together, human ingenuity and Meridian tradition. After all, isn't that what my journey has been about? The 3 moons had set, but their work was far from over. A storm was still coming, one that would test not just Nayara's leadership, but the very foundations of both their civilizations. Deep in the underground levels of the Meridian Palace, Dr. West's laboratory had become a fortress of activity. Holographic displays showed the spread of the engineered plague across the outer provinces, while teams of human and Meridian scientists worked tirelessly to develop a cure. Princess Nayara moved through the space with practiced ease, her neural interface translating the complex data streams into acoustic patterns she could interpret. Another outbreak in the Western Reach, she noted, touching a pulsing light on the display. They're getting more aggressive. Commander Harrison studied the pattern of attacks. Darius's supporters are making their final push. They think if they create enough fear and chaos, the people will reject both your leadership and the human alliance. Then we'll give them neither fear nor chaos, Nayara replied firmly. Dr. West, how close are we to a breakthrough? The doctor's fingers danced across her console. The combination of Meridian crystal harmonics and human genetic engineering is promising. The virus responds to specific frequencies, if we can. An explosion rocked the laboratory. Through the smoke and chaos, dark figures in stealth suits descended from the shattered crystal ceiling. They moved with the deadly grace of Meridian elite warriors, but their wings were augmented with advanced tech that masked their energy signatures. Protect the research, Harrison shouted, drawing his sidearm. Security teams rushed to secure the vital data as the attackers struck with precision. Nayara's enhanced senses detected the subtle air currents of an attacker approaching from behind. She spun her platform, using its defensive shields to deflect a neural disruptor blast. The attack would have shut down her interface systems, leaving her helpless. Through her audio processing, she recognized a familiar voice among the attackers. Admiral Thuron, she called out. I should have known Darius wouldn't be working alone. The Admiral's laughter echoed through the chamber. Very good, little princess. Your toys have made you more perceptive, but it's time to end this farce. The battle intensified. Harrison and his team held the ground forces at bay while Dr. West worked frantically to secure their research data. But they were outnumbered, and the attackers had clearly studied their defenses. In the midst of the chaos, Nayara made a decision. She opened a private channel to Harrison. "Commander, do you trust me?" "Always, Your Highness." "Then be ready." Nayara accessed her platform's deepest protocols, connecting it to the crystal chamber's resonance field. As a child, she had spent countless hours learning the subtle harmonics of the palace's crystal architecture. Now, she would use that knowledge. She began to sing. The sound started low, almost subsonic, but grew in complexity. The crystal walls vibrated in response, creating overlapping wavelengths of energy. The attackers faltered, their augmented wings struggling against the resonant frequencies. "Dr. West, now," Harrison commanded. The doctor activated a pulse of focused electromagnetic energy, carefully tuned to Nayara's harmonic pattern. The combination shorted out the attackers' tech, sending them tumbling to the ground. Admiral Thuron snarled as security forces surrounded him. "You don't understand. The plague, the attacks, were trying to save our civilization from being corrupted." "No," Nayara responded, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "You're trying to save your own power, and you failed." She turned to Dr. West. "Show them." The doctor projected her latest findings. "The plague's genetic markers don't just point to Darius. They contain traces of Admiral Thuron's genetic signature as well. You didn't just help engineer it, you tested it on your own people." The Admiral's expression crumbled as his co-conspirators stared at him in horror. The evidence was irrefutable. But even as security led the conspirators away, Harrison's expression remained troubled. This was too easy. They were desperate, making mistakes. Nayara nodded grimly. "Because this isn't over. They were just the military arm. Someone else is pulling the strings, someone who knows about the one weakness in my neural interface system." "What weakness?" Before she could answer, the laboratory's lights flickered, and Nayara's interface system began to fail. Her platform lurched, and through the growing static in her mind, she heard a new voice, one that had haunted her nightmares since childhood. "My dear granddaughter," Empress Dowager Seleni's voice purred through the speakers. "Did you really think I would let you destroy everything we've built?" The Empress Dowager's infiltration of their systems was total. Throughout the palace, security protocols failed as ancient defense systems activated, their crystal matrices humming with deadly energy. "I've watched you play at leadership," Seleni's voice echoed through the chambers. "Watched you corrupt our pure bloodline with human technology. Did you think I would allow such heresy from the grandchild who killed my daughter?" Nayara's hands trembled on her failing platform controls. The old accusation still cut deep. Her mother's death in childbirth had marked her as cursed from birth. "Your Highness," Dr. West called out, frantically working at her console. "She's using the palace's original crystal network to override our systems. I can't stop it." Harrison caught Nayara as her platform slowly descended. The neural interface was failing, leaving her trapped in darkness once again. But something was different this time. "The crystals," she whispered. "I can still hear them." Years of working with the palace's harmonics had taught her their subtle language. Even without the interface, the vibrations spoke to her. Her grandmother had forgotten, or never known, that Nayara's true strength came from within. "Commander," she gripped Harrison's arm, "get everyone to the heart chamber now." The heart chamber was the oldest part of the palace, a massive crystal cave where the first Meridian Empress had established their civilization. As they rushed through the chaos, Harrison's team protecting their retreat, Nayara explained her plan. "The plague, the neural interface attacks, they're all based on harmonic frequencies. Grandmother didn't just want to stop human influence. She wanted to prove that only pure Meridian blood could control the crystals." Dr. West's eyes widened. "But you've adapted. Your brain processes the harmonics naturally now." "Exactly. The interface didn't give me abilities. It just enhanced what I'd already learned." They reached the heart chamber, its ancient crystals pulsing with power. "And now we'll show her what true adaptation means." Empress Seleni's laughter filled the chamber. "How fitting. You've brought your human pets to witness your final failure. The heart chamber responds only to the purest Meridian bloodline, my bloodline." The chamber's crystals began to glow red, their frequencies shifting to deadly levels. But Nayara stood calm at the center of the storm. She began to sing, not the practiced harmonics of court ceremony, but something older, more primal. The song of crystal growth, of geological patience, of adaptation and survival. Her voice carried the knowledge of years spent listening to the palace's hidden songs. The crystals resonated. "Impossible," Seleni's voice cracked. "You're corrupted, weakened." "No, grandmother, I am evolved." Nayara's song grew stronger. "Humanity didn't weaken us, they showed us how to grow stronger. Just as my mother's final gift wasn't death, but teaching me to see the world differently." The heart chamber's crystals shifted from red to blue, then to a pure, clear light. Throughout the palace, systems began to reset, harmonic patterns realigning to Nayara's song. Harrison and Dr. West watched in awe as the princess they had helped learn to walk now commanded the very foundations of her civilization. The chamber's energy peaked, and in a flash of light, all of Seleni's corrupted protocols were purged. In her hidden control room, the Empress Dowager screamed as her systems failed. Security teams, led by Harrison's intelligence, had already traced her location. When the light faded, Nayara stood transformed, not by technology or physical power, but by the pure authority she commanded. The heart chamber hummed in harmony with her presence, acknowledging her as its true heir. "The plague?" she asked Dr. West. The doctor checked her readings and smiled. "The crystal harmonics have neutralized it. Your song created the resonance pattern we needed for the cure." Hours later, as the three suns rose over the crystal spires, Nayara addressed her people. She stood proudly on her hover platform, but now it was by choice rather than necessity. Her grandmother and the other conspirators would face justice, but her focus was on the future. "For too long we feared change," she declared. "We confused purity with stagnation, tradition with limitation. But true strength lies in adaptation, in learning from others while holding true to our core values." She gestured to Harrison, Dr. West, and the other humans who had helped her. "Our alliance with Earth doesn't weaken us, it reveals new possibilities. Just as my differences weren't a curse, but an opportunity to find new ways of leading." The crowd's response was overwhelming. Meridian wings created a rainbow of color against the crystal towers as they performed the traditional gesture of loyalty, not out of duty, but genuine respect. Harrison approached her after the ceremony. "So, what happens now, Your Highness?" Nayara smiled, her unseeing eyes bright with purpose. "Now, Commander, we build something new. A future where difference is celebrated, where tradition and innovation dance together like our three suns in the sky." She touched the crystal wall beside her, feeling its song. "After all, the strongest crystals are those that adapt to pressure, incorporating new elements to become something more beautiful than before." And so began a new era for the Meridian Empire, led by a princess who had once been called broken, but who had proven that sometimes the greatest strength lies in learning to shine differently.